The iMore Show is brought to you today by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, and online store. For a free trial and 10% off, visit squarespace.com and enter offer code iMore at checkout. A better web starts with your website. It is Thursday, August 28, 2014, and right now we're going to talk all about Apple's newly confirmed September 9th event. New iPhones, new iWatches, new all the things. This is the iMore Show. Joining me, as always, we have the managing editor of iMore.com and Internet Bon Vivant, Peter Cohen. How are you, Peter?
I am good, Rene. Thank you. How are you today?
I am doing very well, but we'll get to why I am plastered with a smile in a minute. But first, I want to introduce the head ninja in residence. I'm not sure. I haven't got a good intro for you yet, Ali, but I'm working on it. How are you?
I'm good. I'd be better if you had a good intro.
The chocolate chip cookie of ninjas. Does that work? Nah, that sounds kind of goofy. I'll keep working on it. I'll put it in Trello. How's that?
Okay.
We'll workshop it.
We'll workshop it. We'll parking lot it, and then we'll workshop it. Oh, God, I feel like Casey List now. In any event, big news today. Apple confirmed their September 9th, their widely rumored, widely anticipated September 9th iPhone event. Not a huge surprise. We wrote about it back in January, I think, and it was fairly logical because Apple has used the same week going on 3 years, I think, ever since they not the first time they moved to the fall, because the iPhone 4S, I think, was a little bit later than that, October. But since the 5 and the 5S, it's been that week in September. And it's official. One thing I want to point out first is I know this just from interactions that I've had. As soon as those invitations go out, Apple's graphic design department cracks open some adult beverages and starts to watch everyone read the tea leaves and giggle. Because the event, I mean, this year it has an Apple logo, it has a shadow on it. Some people are saying, hey, that shadow looks like an hourglass. It's an iWatch. It's an iWatch. And sometimes there are things written into it. Like last year there were colorful dots, and I guess you could equate those to the colorful dots on the iPhone 5C. But, Peter, I'm just happy we got an invite.
Indeed, indeed. And Rene, on behalf of longtime readers and, of course, the rest of the staff, I know it's been a long time coming, so I'm very pleased for us and for our readers that we'll actually be able to cover one of these events live and in the flesh for the first time.
Yeah, I get to go. This is awesome.
It's excellent.
Yeah, I'm happy about that. We really put all our effort into the events, whether we get invited or not. We put, as Peter and Ali and my lack of sleep schedule will tell you, we put 397% effort into these things. We try to cover it every which way from Sunday. And if we can actually do that live, that just makes us happier because we can bring it to you live and in person. I'm psyched,
Indeed.
Ali.
Me too.
So let's break this down a little bit. What are we anticipating? Traditionally at this event we get, at least for the last few years, the new iPhone. Rumors for this year suggest that we could get two of those, a 4.7-inch and a 5.5-inch. Although the rumors, the 5.5-inch, there haven't been as many part leaks. There have been very few part leaks compared to the iPhone, compared to the 4.7-inch model. I know you pay attention to the parts, Ali. Does that mean anything to you?
I'm personally hoping it means that there's not one, but I know that's probably not going to be the case. I just don't like big phones like that. Typically, a lot of the times when parts aren't leaking, sometimes Apple's really good at keeping wraps on new products. I think that could be either, number one, it's not ready for a fall launch, or at least in September, or it could mean that suppliers and vendors don't really know what they're looking at. A lot of Samsung screens or any other manufacturer's screens, sometimes those come out of the same factories. So for all intents and purposes, how does someone that's leaking parts know whether they're producing an LCD or a display for Samsung or for Apple? So sometimes they don't know, they're just coded. So that could be the case, and with like the standard size now, they know what they're looking for. They know the dimensions of Apple's phone. So
as a consumer, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, Peter, but as a consumer, I would like, my ideal situation would be for Apple to say, here's a 4.7-inch iPhone, here's a 5.5 one, much like they did with the iPad Air and iPad Mini last year, and I can make my choice upfront, informed, on that day. If the iPhone 5, if the 5.5-inch iPhone is announced but is shipping later, that's sort of okay because I can wait if I really want to. But if it's not even announced and yet it comes at some later date, it's harder for me to make an informed choice because I'll absolutely get the 4.7 inch, and then I might be wondering, well, should I switch? I don't know.
You know, it'll be interesting to see how they approach this because I'm sure that a lot of consumers are in the same boat if they have, these two different options. That's what I'd like to see them do too. I'd like to see them offer us same day, same date. You can either buy the big one or the little one. The only difference is the price. The feature set, the what's under the hood is completely identical. The only difference is that the big one is going to cost you a little bit more money.
Oh yeah, let me ask you about that because we talked about that on this week's episode of Vector, and Georgia said that she would absolutely pay $100 more for a bigger iPhone the way you'd pay $100 more for a bigger iPad. You guys, what do you think about that?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Go on, Allie.
I mean, I think it depends on the materials they're using. If sapphire comes through the way that people are saying, it's going to be more expensive to produce a larger panel. I can't see Apple making feature sets different, but it makes sense to me. The Retina display iPad mini costs less than a full-size iPad Air, so I mean, I would think that there would be a price difference. I would almost expect that.
Yeah, there kind of has to be, as far as I know. I mean, it doesn't make sense that there would be a big price difference between the two devices, but the question is, what sort of price difference would make sense, and where does it start getting? Where does it overly complicate the product matrix, and where also does it turn off customers? I mean, because people like myself, will go out and buy an unsubsidized phone. Well, even for a new 5S last year, that was $650. So let's assume that that's the baseline that we're working with. What's a big one going to be? $750? That's a lot of money to spend on a phone. Likewise, it's going to be a lot of money to pay back if you've got a subsidized plan too.
What's the difference between the iPads right now?
$100.
$100.
Is it? Okay. I never understood. And then you have different, they base it, storage capacity is always a $100 difference, but then you look at the difference between Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi plus LTE iPads, and there's a $130 difference there.
So it's a little complicated, and there's two reasons for that. One is pure marketing, and one is a little bit licensing. So the $100 increments are because those are easily understandable. So the whole thing is Apple wants a low-end, and this is not just Apple. Almost every company that markets a product wants a low-end version, a low-price version to get you in the door. And almost anyone comes in, they come into the door, they come into the store through the low-cost version. Then they typically buy the middle-range version. Some people go all the way up to the high-end version. You always have some premium customers, but mostly you have that sort of sandwich: low-end, medium, and expensive versions, and that's how products are made. What does Apple decide to charge for? It has to be something that people understand. So they go with capacity because people understand that a bigger quote-unquote iPhone, even if it's something silly like SSD storage, solid-state storage, people understand 16 gigabytes is smaller than 32 gigabytes is smaller than 64 gigabytes. So even though the pricing doesn't make any sense, it's $100 and there's size increments. Same thing with the iPad mini and the iPad Air. It's bigger. It is more iPad. So charging $100 more for it makes sense. Apple could pick anything to charge a price. They could use different materials. They could have exclusive colors, whatever. But they thought was easily understandable. And then you have the 3G versions and the LTE versions. A lot of that is because of Qualcomm. I forget the exact rate, but Qualcomm has an exorbitant royalty on radios, and they have an even higher one if that radio has to be compatible with CDMA. And because Verizon and Sprint in the U.S. alone in the entire world never got their shit together and went to either HSPA or EVDO Rev B or any other compatible technology, Apple is left supporting all these customers in their home country using these legacy technologies, and that increases the cost of the licensing fee paid to Qualcomm for every single cellular iPhone and iPad, and Apple passes that cost, plus some markup along to us. But to Peter's point, I think it does start to get complicated at a certain point.
Yeah, so we'll see what they do. I'm sure they'll try to simplify it as much as they can, but it's going to be an interesting announcement on the 9th. Lots of good stuff for us to look at after, during and after.
It's always interesting to me when you go to explain pricing for an Apple product to someone. iPhones have always been pretty easy. You want more storage, you're going to pay $100 for each step up. Then you get to iPads and people are like, wait, what? What is, I've just had relatives and it's which one should I get? And then you start with do you want just Wi-Fi? And they're like, what is the difference? So I could see that getting complicated.
How many inches of iPhone do you want to buy, ma'am? And they cut the cake off right there.
Yep.
And it's the same as buying anything in a store. A couple of questions already, and we've had a couple come in recently too. Ali, what do you think about colors? Apple has traditionally had the new iPhone be in black or white, and whether that's slate gray and silver or what have you. Last year they introduced gold, but they also added the iPhone 5C at the mid-tier, and that came in white and yellow and green and blue and pink. There's very few rumors of a new 4-inch iPhone. The iPhone 5C will probably drop down. The iPhone 5S, I don't know if that drops down or gets discontinued, or if there's a new plastic iPhone 5S because it's easier to manufacture, the same way the 5C was easier to manufacture, and that stays colored. But I don't know if any high-end iPhone will get more colors this year.
I think that Apple has a lot of logistical problems with a first run of a phone. So obviously Apple's going to sell more of an iPhone 6 than they will of an iPhone 5S or a 5C going forward. With my knowledge of, I said last year that I did not think that Apple would anodize in any other color but gold, and they didn't. iPods are one thing because that's not nearly the market share that iPhones have, and they don't have to produce them nearly as fast. There's a lot of room for error the more colors. Obviously, they have data for colors to go off of with iPods, but how well does that translate to iPhones? I could see them bumping the specs of the 5C to what's in the 5S right now and just altering the case slightly. It makes sense they did color and plastic because that's much easier to manufacture and it's much less room for error. So I could see them going that route again and just bumping the specs on that model. I can't see them going color with any other color than gold for an aluminum model.
Gold
I want purple.
You and Samuel Jackson both. Peter, capacity. Curtis is asking about capacity, 128 gigabyte version. Usually, at least by Apple's previous patterns, we would have gotten that last year because they went to 32, then 2 years later they went to 64. 2 years later they did not go to 128. It's rumored again for this year. I know you've still got an iPod Classic because you love your local music. Does a 128 gigabyte iPhone appeal to you? And if Apple does it, what makes more sense for them to get rid of the 16 gigabyte version finally and just move everything down, or to add a new, yet one more $100 more expensive tier on top, like they did with the iPad?
I'd love to see them make 32 the new baseline. I think 16 is becoming more and more of an edge case. Especially as photography has gotten a lot more sophisticated on iPhones, and people have become much more acclimated to keeping stuff like photos and video on their phones. I would love to see Apple move it to the next level and take 32 to the base, go 64, 128, and then offer 256 for somebody like me who is a complete digital pack rat, as it were. What's the likelihood of Apple doing that? I don't know, but this is just me wishful thinking.
You would get a 256 gigabyte iPhone?
No.
Okay.
No, I would get a 256 gigabyte iPod Touch in a heartbeat.
And what about an iPad?
No.
Okay.
No. I've got a 64 gig iPad third generation model that I have yet to fill. My iPad use case is different, but we've talked about this before, and this is just my blind spot. I would really like to have one device that has my entire music library on it besides an iPod Classic.
And you want it to be large screen so you can game on it.
And I want to be able to throw some apps on there so I can have some fun playing games, or stay in touch with my friends, or check out iMore or whatever. I would like to be able to do all the same things as I can on my phone. I don't necessarily know that I would, pay to have. I mean, because I think the current phone that I've got is 32 gigs, and that's more than sufficient for what I do on the phone. But yeah, I would like that one device to completely erase the iPod Classic from the need list forever.
I'm also hoping it would eliminate the 8 gigabyte iPhone, which maybe it'll be better under iOS 8 because things like iCloud Photo Library introduce the concept of nearline storage, so not everything has to be on your device at once. But 8 gigabytes is just so constrained for an iPhone, and it's typically in emerging markets or for people who really want to pay less than nothing for an iPhone. But I think almost anyone would regret that eventually. And if it started off at 16, forget getting rid of 16, but if you make 16 the ultra cheap emerging markets and budget carrier iPhone, then I think at least those poor people won't be hitting the capacity cap the minute they download an app.
I've heard more and more. I just had a conversation with one of my friends yesterday that has a 16 gigabyte iPhone 5, and they're not tech savvy, but they take a lot of pictures. They have a lot of apps. They've had iPhones for several years. I've heard more people complain about it this year that they instantly regret buying a 16 gigabyte iPhone and not paying the extra $100 because they get home and their phone's already full. Like the minute they transfer their backup over, or iCloud is, it can't back up to iCloud because they don't have enough storage and they don't want to pay for it. So I think for Apple to drop the tiers, especially as Peter stated with how good the camera has gotten, and especially when you add things like slow motion video and the time-lapse feature in iOS 8, those are going to take up tremendous amounts of storage. I think Apple would make the money back on what people pay in iCloud Drive.
Yeah, I mean...
I know people that have bought larger capacity iPhones just because they can't fit their crap on it anymore. So, and they don't want to do transferring stuff.
That is not a bad suggestion. I haven't seen any leaks for new iPod Touches. I mean, the last time Apple revved them was when the iPhone 5 came out last year. They added space gray as a color, but didn't otherwise change them. I would like to see the iPod Touch following along and going to 4.7 or 5.5. Maybe 5.5 is not necessary because there's an iPad Mini. But I'd like to see the iPod Touch continue. I know sales are down. Apple doesn't even mention them anymore on their press releases. But I think there is, like to Peter's point, a market for that small tablet. I just don't know if we'll see it at this event. In fact, I don't think we'll see it at this event.
I almost wonder if they'll bother updating iPod Touches with Touch ID or anything when they update iPads with Touch ID. I don't know if, like as slim as they've gotten, if that would even be feasible.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got a couple other questions. So, do you think Apple will launch a Touch ID-based payment system during the event, or would they save that for new iPads, possibly in October? I don't think there's a correlation between Touch ID and the new payment system. I've heard persistent rumors of the new payment system. I think Touch ID would be a convenience for it, the way Siri, and we can talk about that later, Siri is a convenience for HomeKit. But I think Apple's perfectly capable of launching a mobile payment system with or without Touch ID. Touch ID just makes it ever so much more convenient. I don't know if I can say I expect to see it. I would not be surprised at all if payments finally get rolled out. I mean, years ago when Apple introduced Passbook, it was Passkit, let you do things and codes. But it's a highly modular system, and putting a payment system in place beneath that, especially when you have the giant iTunes engine all around you, it's not trivial, but it makes a lot of sense for Apple. There are areas about how the financing and transactions and all that would work, but the bones, the skeleton for a payment system, I think is there and would not surprise me at all. And I'd like to know your guys' opinion. I'm in Canada. I am dripping in NFC. I pay for McDonald's with NFC. I pay for the groceries with NFC. My gas gets paid for. I just tap my wallet and I go. I don't have to worry about anything. People bring machines to the table. I tap them. I pay for my meals. It's like, as a friend of mine from Apple called it, formerly from Apple called it is Canadian magic. I don't know if Apple's going to go to NFC. Apple has had NFC in previous iPhone versions, and they've pulled it out. They've not chosen to go ahead with it. They've chosen to double down on Bluetooth LE instead. What's the American take on this? We'll start with Peter. Is this something that you want? Do you want to be able to pay for stuff with your iPhone?
I'd like to have a more secure way of paying for stuff. And if NFC is the way that the industry and that banks have decided that we should go, then we should probably go that way. It makes a lot of sense. I'm one of those iPhone users who actually uses Passbook. I've got my Starbucks card in there. I've got my AAA card. I've got my boarding passes for the last few flights that I've taken. I use Passbook with, and I most recently over the weekend used it for concert tickets through Ticketmaster. So I'm accustomed to certainly buying stuff on my phone. I'm accustomed to having that digital wallet in Passbook that makes those kind of transactions easier. So I'm definitely ready to take the next step and just be able to tap my phone to a payment kiosk in a retailer and pay that way if it were linked to my bank account or linked to a credit card. I think it would make a lot more sense. It's something that I've always got on me. It's ubiquitous. It's easy to use. So yeah, I would love to see NFC in an upcoming iPhone for sure.
I'm gonna put up my Passbook just a second so I can watch Allie wince because she hates how busy it is.
But mine's probably worse actually.
I've got I've got Air Canada boarding passes in here. I've got a movie ticket in here. I've got an Eventbrite in here. I've got Starbucks in here. I don't know. My Tim Hortons not in here. I gotta fix that. I gotta get the.
Tons of stuff. It's too bright though. I've got Airbnb, all of my BillGuard stuff, Starbucks, airline miles, iTunes, movie tickets. I mean, we use everything. There's so many times that I leave my wallet in my car and I dictate, like, if I forget my wallet at home, I'm going to go to Starbucks because I can pay with my phone at Starbucks and I don't have a card on me.
That's the thing, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It starts to dictate your behavior because it's just so convenient to use. Mm-hmm. I can think of the times on one hand in the past year that I've left my house without my phone, but, leaving my house without my wallet, well, my wallet's got my license in it, so maybe that's not the best example, but the point is I almost never leave the house without my phone.
I also hate collecting cards. I would like to have less cards to carry in my wallet. Just like a billfold would be great.
I mean, I have my passport and my driver's license in my phone. So, I mean, I actually got pulled over one time and showed them my driver's license on my phone, and that was fine. So, and I think Martin did something with a passport and an iPad, didn't he?
Martin didn't have his passport, but he showed it to them on the iPad, and they let him cross, and then they were told to never, not ever let anyone do that again. I think Peter filed a protest saying that Martin was eating all his Dunkin' Donuts, so I don't know how that...
Oh, yeah, it was crossing the border into Massachusetts, huh?
The other thing we didn't talk about, Allie, and I'm also interested in your opinion on this, is that we have seen some part leaks that show a raised camera on the iPhone 6 enclosure, similar to how the iPod Touch's camera is raised. Mm-hmm. Now, the rumor is that Apple's going to make the iPhone thinner again, and as we all know, cameras hate thinness. Cameras, that's why lenses, when you look at big DSLR lenses, they are so deep. It's because cameras like Z-index. It's what lets them do all sorts of fancy lens craft. Apple, it was a miracle of engineering that Apple could stuff an iPhone 4S camera into a thin iPhone 5 body, and if they go thinner still, I mean, they'd have to work really hard to still get the same quality camera, and I'm ready for a better camera. Would you put up with a pushed-out lens to get a better one?
What is it now, 8 megapixels?
Yes.
Yeah, 2.2 I think is, yeah. Okay. That's the one thing I really hated about the new iPads. I'm used to Apple products that are, it's a completely seamless phone device. It looks perfect. I would tolerate it for a better camera, yeah, but it better be a lot better camera. I don't want, 12 megapixels and nothing else. And I mean, I don't even really care about the resolution.
Optical image stabilization, would that do it for you?
Yeah, I think that would.
Like the HTC One?
Well, it depends. I mean, do we end up talking about something like the what is it, the Lumia 1520 that's got the huge
No.
Mine's in the other room. That's got a 41 megapixel camera, Peter. I could photograph you from here.
I know. I've seen some amazing photographs with it, but it also distorts not just the shape of the case to put a lens like that in there, but because of all the optical because of the optical image stabilization stuff that they use, it makes it, and just because of the weight, it makes it weirdly balanced in your hand.
It's like a face hugger on a phone, right?
I don't think Apple would ever put up with anything like that. Just from a design perspective, Johnny Ive would have a stroke before he'd let something like that out the door.
Well, and I don't think Apple's been very good in the past about balancing. So I was surprised when I did a camera shootout last time even though the camera specs weren't, I mean, we didn't get any more megapixels over the 5, I don't believe. And pictures are still so much better. I think it depends on how they balance it. So last time with the 5S, I think they looked at improving night photography, so you had better pictures, better whites, better tones in the dark. I think to do that, they made it a little faster. The aperture went up a little bit. I think it depends on how what they sacrifice and what they're stuffing into it. I don't think that a 41 megapixel camera is, it's not all about megapixels, and people get fixated on that. I mean, my Nikon is 16 megapixels. I don't need 41 in that, so I don't know why I would need it in
The
a
41 were for oversampling, but it's interesting when you look at the industry. Nokia has done an amazing job. Nokia, now Microsoft, has done an amazing job with the collection phase. They pull in an awesome amount of light, and they can do some cool stuff with it. Apple has done an amazing job with the image signal processor. They have the best image signal processor in the business. With a Nokia camera, you can futz around it like a DSLR and get a great shot, but if you just hit the camera shutter on an iPhone, most of the time you'll get the best picture you possibly can. Once in a while there'll be errors, but most of the time, for a normal person, it's just literally tap and shoot, and that's it. And then Google has been doing everything on the server with their Auto Awesome stuff. But they've all been sticking to their area of expertise. And it'll be interesting to see, because Microsoft's got Microsoft Labs. They are no dummies. They could do some cool stuff there too. And Apple, if they just do it the way the iPod Touch is, where it's slightly raised and it's got a nice sapphire coating to prevent scratches and things, and then they'd be able to make a better optics on the camera, combine that with whatever DSP they put in the A8 chipset, and whatever they can do with iCloud Photo Library, now that that's a core part of the operating system, and they start to get really exciting for me. I mean, I want that now.
I think a lot of why the iPhone does a lot better with overall general everyday photography is the software. Panoramics are a huge use case of that. I mean, just the way the 64-bit processor on the iPhone 5S processes panoramas, it's like night and day, even when you look compared to the S5 and the HTC One M8. It just handles that so much better.
HTC One, open parentheses, M8, close parentheses, for Windows. Sorry, I had to get that out. Product names made easy. So there's the camera, there's a mobile processing system. Are we looking for anything else? Do you guys have anything else on your iPhone wish list? I mean, in a perfect world, I could press the home button and gorgeous espresso would come pouring out of the lightning port, but I'm trying to keep myself more realistic this year.
I can't really think of anything that's on my need list for the new iPhone that I don't already have with the 5S. I'm not saying that the 5S is the perfect phone, but I'm just not seeing a lot of problems that I need to address with my phone.
The interesting thing is the stuff that you're getting is going to come to every phone. Like you're getting Wi-Fi calling on T-Mobile. You'll get that on the 5S, but it'll assume probably ship with the 6 as well. And there is all the other stuff, the HomeKit and the iCloud Drive, and so much of iOS 8. Typically, we do see more of the new version of iOS. Like Siri was a software feature, a software-based feature. So there is a chance that we haven't seen everything that there is to see with iOS 8, and maybe if there are other products there, we'll see tie-ins there. So it's really exciting. Typically, if Apple, there's a bunch of questions piling up, so I'll try to get to them. Apple sometimes streams events. Lately, they've always been streaming them if they can. There was one venue, I think, that was too small. They couldn't get all the equipment in there, but everything else they've been streaming. So I would expect them to stream it, but you never know for sure, and you usually only find out the day of the event. So it's really, unless Apple pre-announces it, it's impossible to know. If Apple follows to pattern, the iPhone event will be the 9th. Then iOS 8 will launch on the 17th, a couple days before the phone launches on the following Friday, which would be the 19th. And pre-orders, again, pre-orders depend on how much Apple has in stock, because they know people are going to go to the stores on that day. They have to have enough for the stores. Do they have enough for pre-orders as well? If they do, they'll do them. If they can't manufacture enough, they'll wait and do them later. They'll do everything they can to make sure as many people who want an iPhone on launch day can get it. Other expectations for this? Peter, we've been talking about this. I don't believe that OS X Yosemite is going to launch the same day. I believe that's going to follow a few weeks, maybe a month later. But some people are asking because one of the major features in iOS 8 is continuity, and that really needs Yosemite for Apple to show it off and for people to start using it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, iOS 8 has other usability issues that aren't related to continuity at all that will stand alone from Yosemite. So I don't think that iOS 8's introduction, I don't think the iPhone 6's introduction is going to be diminished terribly if Yosemite is not available same day, same date as iOS 8 is. But you're right, the continuity certainly presents an important key for Apple going forward to attract as much as it is to give iOS users something. It's giving them something to consider the Mac for the next purchase too. So, it's a long-term thing.
Also on the agenda, rumor has it now. Originally, I think I'd heard this as well. John Bertowski heard that the watch was coming in October, and that was the last I'd heard of it as well. But now he's saying that he's heard, and John Gruber mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that the iWatch is coming in September. It doesn't mean it's going to be released in September. Apple showed off the original iPhone 6 months before launch. They showed off the original iPad 3 or 4 months before launch.
Did the same thing with the Mac Pro last year.
Mac
Introducing
Pro?
it in June, but not shipping it until December.
The original Apple TV was shown off in the fall and then shown off again at the iPhone event in January. So Apple could show it off and launch it later, or they could show it off and launch it immediately. The iWatch, and we don't know that's going to be its name. In fact, it probably may not be its name, but it's an easy thing for everyone to understand what we're talking about if I use it. So the iWatch is interesting to me. My expectation is that it's going to be a wrist-worn device with a screen running iOS. Part of what I heard originally is that Apple had wearables. Apple had iPods that you could wear. They had iPod Shuffles and iPod Nanos that were wearable devices, but they ran Pixel. They did not run iOS. And Apple brought the iPod Nanos kind of sort of towards iOS, but not really. And Peter with his iPod Classic, that's not connected to iCloud. That you have to sync with iTunes. You have to use a USB cable. It is not a modern device. It's not an iOS. It is not born of iOS or iCloud. And Apple made a big deal about bringing the Photos app into the modern age. And it's my understanding they want to bring their wearables into the modern age as well. And that means iOS in some form, and that means iCloud. And that, if this launches as the new iPod, if it launches an iWatch, if it launches a wearable, a band, whatever, that'll be it. It will be a modern Apple device. And I don't know what they'll launch with. Again, my expectation is it will be a wrist-worn device with a screen. But I could absolutely see them having a line of these eventually the way they did with the iPods. A band with no screen that's $50, that's easy to get into, ultra low end. It lets you do all the health kit stuff that you want to do. And then, sort of an iPod Nano version, which maybe even looks like the iPod Nano Watch did when they made those, and has a small screen that can run basic apps and have a few icons and do that sort of stuff. And then maybe a high-end version that they put all this fashion and retail and materials and expertise on that's expensive. It's like the iPod Classic or Mac Pro of the lineup, the ultra high-end, and you have that range of wearable devices. You looked at a ton of these sorts of things, Ali. What interests you in wearables these days?
I want something that I don't have to charge every day because it's something that I don't want to have to worry about having to plug in. So I think that's important to a lot of people that have ever used wearables. I also want something that's easy to take on and off and isn't basically uncomfortable. I looked at pretty much everyone on the market, and I ultimately ended up using daily the one that was the easiest to take on and off. I didn't have to charge every day, which for me was the Up 24. But it's one more thing to charge, and I think people are going to take that into consideration. And of course, a lot of people, I've had so many people tell me, I won't wear a fitness tracker because it's ugly. So I've had a lot of friends and family tell me that. So I think that, Apple would be stupid not to be aware of that, and I think that, there would probably have to be a variety for people to choose from in order for that to create mass appeal.
Yeah, so when I think about it, there's several things I'd want. I agree with all of those things. And Pebble famously put waterproofing at the top of their list so you could shower with it, and I would not be surprised if Apple, is going to have a couple of focuses with this. One is going to be the health kit stuff, just like the health app on the iPhone is going to tie into it. The health kit will probably be surfaced on the watch, but then there's also that would be logging, because. I think we talked about this earlier, Ali, but for example, if I go out, especially if I go out to run, it's harder to have a phone with me. It's much easier to have something like a Fitbit with me. But the phone can also track my walking, and sometimes the Fitbit's uncomfortable on my wrist, and I take it off, and I just have my phone with me. And I want all this stuff to work together. I want whatever I have with me to keep track and then sort of seamlessly mesh all that together. And if I get a new device, I don't want to start off with zero. My phone knows all my patterns for the last 6 months. Let me load that in there so I have a good starting place. And I think that's going to be key to this, is this logging aspect, that when you're wearing the Apple wearable, it'll keep track of your steps, if you're running, you're swimming, you're cycling, all that kind of stuff. Everything that the HealthKit framework supports. And it'll do that on your phone or on your wrist. It won't matter what you have anymore. It'll just be there when you need it. And that feels kind of liberating to me.
Well, my understanding of HealthKit too is that's going to be an open API for developers, correct? So like Jawbone or whoever could also integrate with that.
Yeah, so the way HealthKit works is actually really cool. Basically, HealthKit creates a database that developers can read and write to. But Apple's really cool about the privacy here. So, for example, you load up a new app, whatever, Runners Plus Plus. It'll say, can we access HealthKit? But it doesn't give you the usual pop-up. It gives you that thing I always wanted, which is that sheet that has a bunch of toggles on it. And you can choose each thing. Like you can say you can share my steps but not my sleep pattern. Or you can share my steps but you can't get my blood sugar level. And you can also say whether they can read or write. So for example, you can say that this device can write your steps but it can't read steps from any other device. And what's more, if you opt out, for example, if let's say you're diabetic and you have your health provider's app and you refuse to share blood sugar level with it, it won't tell them. So your healthcare provider doesn't even know that you might be diabetic, because Apple believes that even giving the app your answers will leak your private information. And that, especially if it's on a watch or something that might fall off my wrist or something, I like that level of privacy control.
Well, and what you said about both of them working seamlessly, so if you're out running with your phone, that should sync up to your wristband and vice versa and back and forth. And I almost wonder if that's something that a new iPhone would support. So I'm not sure what type of sensors, or does it just recognize that that you don't have the wristband on? I would think that they would just play nicely together when they're in range, but if you're walking and your iPhone doesn't find your wristband, that HealthKit or iOS could take over tracking, and then when you open HealthKit, your stuff would just be there. So that's kind of what I would hope, but that would also kind of defeat the purpose of having a watch or a wristband or anything at all.
Well, I think that what'll happen is they'll both collect data. So like if you're out running and you don't want to have your phone with you because it's heavy and it's in your pocket and it's flapping around or whatever, and you just have your wristband on, that'll just collect the data from that run. Or if you don't have your watch on because you're doing something else and you have your phone in your pocket, it'll collect that data, and then all of that will go to HealthKit, and HealthKit will demerge. And there'll probably be some Apple way of doing it, but developers can probably overwrite it if they see there's something not sane about the merging pattern.
Which is pretty much kind of what, like, I don't have to have my phone for Jawbone or whoever to collect information, but then when my phone's in range, I would really like to see some kind of improvements, and maybe it's something Apple can do. Any kind of stationary exercises or when you're running or walking on a treadmill, that's never been picked up accurately, whether it's Jawbone or any other manufacturer. It's just, I don't know. I mean, you can manually go in and put in, like, I did 30 minutes of this type of activity, but what you actually burn is completely different, and it seems like they use MET values or whatever to calculate those. I'd like to see some improvements in those areas, and maybe HealthKit can provide some of that. Yeah,
I don't know, because I know we'll get to HomeKit in a minute, but I know that integrates with accessories. It'll be nice if accessories start integrating with HealthKit so that when HealthKit can't report what you're doing, like when your Apple devices can't report what you're doing, HealthKit can still pick it up from, like your treadmill could directly tell HealthKit what you're doing. It shouldn't have to need like a secondary device on you to read that. That's interesting. The other thing is, so you have logging is one area. Another thing is controlling, and this is where you get into the HomeKit stuff. So HomeKit is like HealthKit. It's a framework. There's no HomeKit app, though. There's no Home.app the way there's a Health.app. So every app, like if you have a Philips Hue app or a Sonos speaker app, all of those have to basically be the de facto Home app. But what HomeKit lets you do is set up homes. So for example, Peter might have his main home and his vacation home on the Cape. And then in those homes, you can set up rooms. So you can have like bedroom, library, kitchen, study, whatever. And in each of those rooms, you can have accessories like lights, like speakers, like refrigerators, whatever you want to have. And they all have unique names because you can control all of them with Siri. You can say, Siri, lights on. You can do, that kind of stuff. Or Siri, good night, and it'll close your garage door, turn on your night lights, turn off your day lights, turn off your TV, turn on your coffee maker, do all this kind of cool stuff. And you can set up actions and triggers. So Allie could walk home and go Glee mode, and her Hue lights could turn on to just the right shade of color for Glee. Her system could pick up the audio. TV could come on. Recliner could go in the right position. And you could also do triggers so that if Allie's in England and she says Hogwarts or something, her entire house locks down. Door locks, everything locks down. So it's really cool. And one of the rumors is that the Apple wearable will be able to interface with HomeKit as well. I don't know if that means it'll have a speaker and you'll be able to use Siri with it, or if it'll have some other sort of interface. But I mean, so Peter, this is me. So I come in here like right now. I don't have the lights on behind me because I forgot to turn them on, and I may not have my phone with me, or my phone might not be charged, or someone might be on the phone, and I still need to control the stuff around me. So the idea of a wearable being able to do everything that a phone can do, just in terms of controlling my house, is highly appealing.
Yeah, I have to admit the same. You know, like you and like Ellie, I've got a home office, and getting everything the right way, and you know, making sure that I don't have a Nest or anything like that. So making sure that the thermostat is set to the right temperature when I'm down here versus when I'm working somewhere else. It's all, you know, stuff that I'd rather not have to deal with. I'd rather not have to deal with it anywhere in the house. I'd rather have my home intelligent enough to know what rooms are being occupied and what rooms are being unoccupied. Shut the lights off in there. You know, tweak the thermostat in that zone if no one's using it, whatever it might be, and just have, you know, my life made easier with this technology more than anything. So seeing the practical applications for HomeKit, seeing how it's going to be deployed, really interests me. I'm going to be fascinated to see what comes down the pike.
I want it so badly.
I do too.
So that's logging and controlling. Another aspect, and I heard about this earlier, but I haven't heard about it as much lately, so I don't know what's still going on with this. But it's what Google's doing a lot of for Android Wear, is the idea of notifications, and Google's doing it with Google Now. Apple has Notification Center. They have Siri, which can do some forms of notification. So the basic idea is you don't have your phone handy, or it's in your pocket, and it's either not convenient or not polite or some other reason you can't get to it. You could just glance at your wrist and you get a high-level readout of your notification. Like, I don't know if they'd be interactive or not, or if initially they wouldn't be and later they would be. But for example, I could see Ali's text to me, or I could be notified of, you know, the iMore podcast is starting in 10 minutes. So basically, anything that you would see on your lock screen on your phone could be projected via Bluetooth 4.0 or whatever onto your watch. Now, I've said this before, but I have a friend who works in a hospital, and she doesn't, you know, women's clothing doesn't typically have pockets in it, and she has a lab coat, but she doesn't like the phone in her pocket, so she leaves it on her desk. And she does her rounds that way. And the hospital uses iPhones as their paging system. So whenever a page comes in, it just gets sent right to her. Right now she uses a Pebble. It gets sent right to her Pebble watch, and she can just look at her wrist and see it. Or if she's with a patient and something happens, she can look at her wrist, and it's not quite as rude as pulling out a phone and saying, hold on a second, even if it's like an emergency page. So I like that idea. I'm not 100% happy with how Google Now does it, because Google Now does a lot more than that, but I think that would be something I'm interested in for a phone. Allie? Sounds like it annoys you.
Idea. I like the idea. I just don't know.
Are you afraid it'd be annoying?
Yeah, I mean, I know when we first got our Pebbles at the beginning of the year, one of my biggest things is I feel like notifications already interrupt real life a lot. So, I mean, for me, I know I had so many people, if I looked at my watch, like, during a conversation, it was like, do you have somewhere to be? You know, it's like, so, and maybe that's different because it would be more mainstream, but I'm just not, I don't know if a wearable is for me, but, you know, I like the idea of wearables, I just don't know, I can't even force myself to wear a fitness tracker regularly.
No, that's fair. And sort of the last part that I'll bring up quickly is authentication. And with authentication, right now you have that with Touch ID, but the idea is of a Bluetooth trusted device. So, for example, you're wearing your watch, you get close to your Mac detects your watch, and because it's your watch, it believes it's you, so it just unlocks the watch. Just unlocks the Mac. I'm not sure that's 100% safe because someone else could be wearing my watch, but for people who like two-factor authentication, you have to put in a password and be wearing your watch, or you have to use Touch ID and have something close by. I mean, there's something you know, which is a password, something you have, which is a wearable, and something you are, which is a fingerprint. And the more factors you have, the more, if you really are concerned about security, the more things you can do. But just the idea that you could have a device on you that identifies you, and whether it's part of mobile payments or it's part of the Touch ID system or something else, I think is interesting. But people have asked me too, like, why hasn't the iWatch leaked? And I think it's exactly what Ali said before. You know, the iPhone didn't really leak. The iPad didn't really leak. There were some reports very close to the event about them, but for the most part, we didn't see. I don't think we saw any parts or any designs for either of those before they came out. And I think Apple has a much easier time keeping new products quiet more than they do updates, especially when those products aren't going to be released immediately. They're not being manufactured in the tens of millions of units yet, because it's really easy for those to fall off of trucks. Not so easy for 1 or 2 prototypes. So that's my suspicion. And with that said, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Squarespace. Squarespace, again, is the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional websites, portfolios, online stores. I love Squarespace because it gets me off the hook. And what I mean by that is I love my family dearly, I love my friends dearly, but I have this reputation. I got a phone call yesterday. I have not been in the web development business going on for, 8 years maybe. I've not been a web developer for 8 years. I got a call from the son of a friend of the family. My dad told me you could help me set up a website for my business. And internally you cringe because they just assume you'll magically do it and keep it up to date for them and all will be wonderful and it's no effort on your part because, hey, that's what you do. But making websites is hard. It is effort. Keeping them updated is effort. And you don't want me doing it because I do not have time to do it for you well or keep it updated for you. But Squarespace does. So whenever somebody calls me now, I just send them the Squarespace link with the iMore promo code, obviously, and I tell them, Squarespace will do it all for you. You go to Squarespace, you don't even need a credit card to sign up. You can just go there and start building a website. It's simple, it's easy, it's got beautiful designs, drag and drop content creation, it's responsive design, so it works on your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac. It looks great everywhere. The plans start $8 a month, and it includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. They even will let you have an e-commerce store. It comes with every plan that Squarespace offers. You can sell stuff, your own T-shirts, your own mugs, whatever you want to sell, you can do it. Best of all, we've set up a free trial. So in addition to the free trial, we've set up 10% off offer for you. So when you decide Squarespace is for you, you've set up your website, you decided you like it, it is the best thing in the world, it has made the internet a better place. All you do is go back to squarespace.com and you enter offer code iMore at checkout. That way you save some money, they find out, they know that you're supporting us and supporting them, and the web is a better place. I have nothing else to say about Squarespace. It's fantastic. You should be building a website right now. In fact, I'm half suspicious that Ali is building a website right now.
I can't talk about that.
All right, so moving on. We're doing a couple things to prepare for the iPhone event. One of them is we're reposting and updating and expanding our history of the iPhone series. So if you want to see how we got to here, you can just head on over to imore.com/history-iPhone. I'll have a link in the show notes. And you can read up about how every iPhone up till today was introduced, how it was received, what the reviews for it said, what problems might have occurred to it, how well it did, all that sort of information, a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff there as well. Just check it out. Ali, you wrote about cleaning up your Facebook news feed.
I did.
Who messed it up?
Oh, dear. Everyone. You, Peter, everyone who posts to Facebook. No, I just was kind of digging through Facebook settings, just, randomly doing that because I was bored, and I noticed that there was a manage newsfeed setting, which I don't really ever remember seeing in past versions. I'll have to look back at screenshots from older how-tos, but I think that's a newer addition, and you can actually go in there and you can quickly unfollow or follow pages, groups, and friends. So that makes it a lot easier than going, like right now you've always had the ability to unfollow or follow someone on Facebook. You can just go right to their profile page or click the little caret on one of their posts and say you don't want to see this and unfollow them. It doesn't unfriend them, but it hides all their stuff from your timeline. But you'd either have to do that with each person or go through your news feed one by one. With this, you can actually go through and you get an entire list of your friends, groups, and pages, and you can toggle between them and quickly go down that list and follow and unfollow stuff. For instance, like sometimes I have pages on Facebook that I don't want to unlike because I want to be able to get to their info just by searching for it, but they spam me with links or they post a lot of, lol cats or whatever to their page, and I don't necessarily want to see
You're looking at Peter again, right?
Mm-hmm. Looking at Peter posting cat pictures.
Talking about me without mentioning me. Yes, okay, fine. I like lolcats, I admit it.
So you can quickly unfollow those people, just tap right next to their name, which for me, I cleaned out my whole news feed in about, 5 minutes. It probably would have taken me an hour to go through and manually find the people in my newsfeed that I really don't want to read their
So
stuff.
I have a different problem. I haven't found a good solution. What happens is I will leave, like Peter or you will post something, I'll put a witty retort in the comments, and then I'll get notifications for the next 3 days whenever anybody else responds to it. And I don't really need those. And on the Mac, you can just go to, like, on the web, you can go to Facebook, you can click on see all notifications, you can click on the X and say, don't send me any more about this. But I haven't found a way on iOS to do that. You're just constantly notified.
Yeah, you can. I do that all the time. I think it's the same thing. Like if you go to...
Looking now.
Let me find out where I did that before. Okay, so the status or whatever it is, I think you have to actually go to the person's status so it pulls it up, whatever you're receiving notifications for. And then you can tap that caret in the top right corner. And there's, I don't know if you can see that or not, there's a stop notifications option on there.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I do that, like if you like someone's status or comment and then you receive 62 notifications. That's especially the case, like if you're saying happy birthday or congratulations on something and then 72 people comment after you.
Can you how-to that for me, Allie?
I can. All
right, that is awesome. Peter, you wrote about something actually interesting and really near and dear to my heart. In addition to the other rumors this week, there was a renewal of the 13-inch iPad rumor. And just to back up for a second, so some people are worried that when there's a bigger screen iPhone, it'll put pressure, it'll cannibalize the iPad mini, because if you can get a 5.5-inch iPhone, maybe you don't need an iPhone and an iPad mini. And a lot of people got iPad minis to travel. It's the most popular iPad, I believe, still. And if you have the 5.5-inch iPhone, you may not need that. So the question then becomes, does that just hurt iPad sales in general, or does it push people towards the iPad Air and maybe even bigger iPads? So as people get bigger iPhones, do they also get bigger iPads? And theoretically, some people don't like the idea, but for people who are creative types, having a bigger iPad is like, the holidays every day. And you were wondering, Peter, if they could actually replace a Cintiq.
Yes, the Wacom Cintiq tablet. So if you're not familiar with them, these things are a mainstay in some creative types offices. The Wacom Cintiq is a pressure-sensitive tablet that has an LED screen or an LCD screen integrated right into it. So the net result is that if you are doing illustration work or graphic design or anything else that's visual, and you would like to work in a way that's much more natural, much more like working with a blank piece of paper or blank canvas on a desk, the Cintiq is the way to do it, because you're actually interacting with the individual pixels that you're moving around, instead of using a tablet that's on a desk that's separated on a horizontal plane instead of the vertical plane of your monitor, and you're sort of flying your hand by remote control. What got me thinking about this was my daughter. I've got a 17-year-old daughter who's a really gifted artist, and her particular joy is drawing these cartoon characters that she's created. These characters that look like the chibi characters or super deformed characters that you sometimes see in Japanese anime and manga. And she does a lot of online role play with her friends, and they've got all these characters that they've created, and she does these illustrations to sort of bring them to life. Excuse me. And she uses the iPad unconditionally. She uses the iPad. She's tried to draw on her Mac. I bought her a bamboo tablet from Wacom a few years ago, but she never really adapted to it that well. And when I asked her why she uses the iPad, she says, it does what I want. It's the right size, and I'm much more comfortable just using my finger on it. And I asked her, well, if you took that iPad and you could tether it to your Mac somehow and use it as an input device directly on your Mac in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever it is that you wanted to use for image editing, would you prefer to do that? And she said, oh yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat. That would be awesome. And it got me thinking about this, that Apple is really kind of blurring the lines between the devices with continuity in iOS 8 and Yosemite. And how much more is that line going to get blurred? Is it possible somewhere down the road, not too far in the distant future, that Apple will make the iPad, in some specialized cases, a direct input device for the Mac. And how would that look? What would it be like? And I was thinking, this would be a case where an iPad Pro, a larger format iPad, could be a really cool thing, because you can actually get a Wacom Cintiq in a 13-inch size. It's the least expensive model. It's only $1,000. Well, imagine spending $800, $1,000, whatever, on an iPad Pro, and having that capability, plus all the other stuff that an iPad can do that a Cintiq cannot. Now, there isn't a direct comparison between putting stuff in an iPad and putting stuff on a Cintiq, because the Cintiq enables you to do pressure sensitivity and stuff like that with a stylus that you actually can't do right now in the same way on on an iPad. I've seen pressure sensitivity simulated on the iPad, but not with the same level of granularity and detail that you get out of a Cintiq. So I know it's not a perfect comparison, but can you imagine, a year or two out, Apple introduces a new iPad, Apple continues this relentless march towards just making your work the focus of what's going on, not the device. It'd be very cool to see an iPad that you could draw on and have stuff appear right on your Mac.
That is super interesting for a couple reasons. First, I'm an artist too, and I would love that. I've had Wacoms for years, especially in my old job when I worked in design. I like them. So the difference between the current iOS devices and Wacoms is that iOS devices have a capacitive screen, and Wacoms use a digitizer. Now, capacitive is interesting because it can do a lot of things, and Apple's very carefully chosen what they do with it. For example, you can sort of fake pressure sensitivity by measuring area. So if you touch with your finger lightly, it's a very small area. If you touch heavily, it sort of flattens out into a much larger area. Also, it's three-dimensional. People assume that they're only reading when you touch it, but as some manufacturers like Nokia have taken advantage of, they can actually detect your fingers when they're a distance away. Samsung and Nokia use this for hover states, or they use it so that you can still use your device while you have a glove on. Apple uses it to better do rejection and better do identification. So if you're about to touch it, it can sort of see the shape of your hand and not only figure out that you're touching it, but which finger you're touching it with and what angle it's at, all these other different things about it. So these are all choices based on engineering. So there are some limits. Again, it's not a digitizer like Wacom, but it can do a lot of stuff. But I also wonder if Apple would ever investigate a digitizer. And I made up this list of sort of 5 things I'd love to see in a iPad Pro, and one was more of a Surface-like keyboard cover, because I love Apple keyboards, but the Bluetooth one doesn't really go well with an iPad. And if I could have an identical keyboard to my laptop, to a MacBook Air, but made that so it fits like a cover on the iPad, that would be great. Pressure sensitivity, like a digitizer, exactly what you said. Deep color support, because especially the iPad Mini doesn't have great color gamut now, and for a photographer or a digital artist who's working at that size, deep color is really important. A 4K camera, and people laugh when you use iPads for photography, but some people it's the only device they have. And also for professionals, I have right here, I bought this. It was expensive. It's a screen that goes on top of my DSLR so that I can do focus properly when we were filming all the Talk Mobile videos. And when we were at CES, we used the iPad Mini as a camera because the screen was so big, it was really easy to make sure you were focused on what you wanted to focus on for for close-up photos. I would love a 4K camera on an iPad Pro so that you could take really, really good, really high detailed videos and have that screen so that you'd made sure they were exactly crisp and focused the way you wanted. And sort of, I think lastly I had on here battery life, because if you have a Pro device, Apple's almost certainly going to go incredibly thin to counteract it. But because there's so much volume, maybe the iPad used to have the longest battery life, 10 hours, just like an iPhone, but the Macs are going to 12 hours now. Maybe an iPad Pro could reclaim that crown, go 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours. Who knows? I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but the only thing I'm concerned of, Peter, is that by definition, like with the MacBook Pro, like with the Mac Pro, when you put the Pro label on it, you get a narrower market.
Yeah, exactly. It is a niche product. I mean, there's no question that a larger tablet would appeal to fewer people than something else. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it can be unprofitable or uninteresting for Apple to explore that market and try to grow that market.
And it is nice, like the Mac Pro, to have that sort of Lamborghini at the top, that aspirational thing at the top of the product line that you can always look at as, wow, that is a next generation thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's fun. It's fun to see what people do with it too. I mean, the work that people do on these high-end systems can sometimes be inspirational in itself.
Mark Edwards, my co-host on Iterate, is on record as saying he would like if Apple made a 42-inch iPad, he would get that. As big as Apple can make an iPad, he would buy it.
Well, that's the latest rumor that I've seen about the mysterious building that Apple is building at the Flint Center, where the iPhone 6 is going to be unveiled. Is that we've got the size all wrong, and the iPhone 6 is actually going to be more than 4,000 inches.
4,700 inches. Allie, do you have any interest in an iPad Pro?
I don't think so. I think that would be geared more towards designers or people that can actually draw more than a stick figure. I don't know. Probably not. I mean, I really missed my full-size iPad when I had a mini, and I really like the Air because it's light and I have that full screen, but I don't think I would want anything past that. I almost still kind of want a mini for travel just because it's so compact. I think I would go the opposite way.
I'm going to take another quick break, and I'm going to tell you about GoDaddy. Yes, GoDaddy. And I know some people got some feedback. Some people were surprised that we had GoDaddy as a sponsor, but GoDaddy is working really hard to sort of clean up their reputation. I know some people didn't like the TV commercials they were doing or the sort of marketing they were doing. That has all changed. They are trying to be a newer, awesomer GoDaddy. And what they are doing also is releasing hundreds of new domains that tell people who you are and what you do, including .guru. There could be Alley.guru. There's .club, iPhonelovers.club, .photography, .expert. There are options for just about everything, and your chances of getting the name you want are now better than ever. Register a domain that helps people find you online before somebody beats you to it. And I mean, I could try to list you. I couldn't even try to list you. There are so many new domains. At first I was sort of adverse to this because I have a hard time remembering there's .com and .org and .net and .ca and .tv and all these things. But eventually the web is going to have to grow up. Eventually we're going to have something more human friendly. I don't know if this is it, but this is the next step. This is what we're trying now. And also it's really hard to get a .com. It's really hard to get the exact name that you want with the existing top-level domains. So this gives you new opportunity. Yes, people won't be as used to it, but maybe an awesome name combined with an easy-to-remember tag, that could just be the ticket for you. So if you find that interesting, you visit GoDaddy.com and enter promo code iMore30, and that'll save you 30% on your order. There are some limitations, so do see the website. But if you're interested in registering something, just go to GoDaddy, check them out. Check out the new GoDaddy, see if you like them. All right, so a couple other things I wanted to bring up quickly, and I just lost the page that I was on. One of the things we were asked is Retina MacBook Air. This is, as far as I know, an iPhone event. It used to be an iPod event, now it's an iPhone event. Apple has traditionally done Macs along with iPads in October, so I'm not expecting anything in the next couple of weeks. You, Peter?
No, I'm not expecting any Mac stuff to be at this September 9th event, and I'm praying not, because otherwise I'll be very jealous that you're there and I'm not.
All right, Allie, you looked at, I forget, what were the apps you looked at this week? Sorry, I'm all over the place today.
I don't know either. I think I looked at some apps for Instagram for the iPad.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and that actually has been annoying me because I use the Instagram for iPhone app on my iPad, and I use it in 2x mode, and it is double chunky fuzzy, and it's really annoying. And I don't know why Instagram can make a new app like Hyperlapse and not make a frickin' iPad app for their main app. So
they don't like you taking pictures with your iPad either.
So judgmental.
Yeah, I actually like a lot of the third-party options better because they provide a lot more options than even the Instagram for iPhone app does. Retro, I don't remember all the ones I included in there, but I don't remember names. Padgram, Retro for Instagram, there was a couple other ones. A lot of those let you not only, you can download photos from Instagram, and some of them even let you download them in bulk, so if you want to download everything that's in your current timeline for the day, you can.
Only your own or other people's as well?
You can download other people's as well.
I can get every picture of your dog.
Every picture. I know you want every sheep picture I've ever posted. But you can also subscribe to different people. So say I want a notification whenever you post a photo or Peter posts a photo. I can do that. I can also follow certain hashtags and just see those in a separate stream, so I don't have to keep like going back to them, because every time you want to search a certain hashtag in the Instagram app, to my knowledge, there's no way to save them. There's no way to save a specific user and receive notifications for those. So when I just want to like actually look through photos, I want to do it on my iPad because there's a lot more screen real estate. So it doesn't make sense to me either that Instagram has not made an app for iPad, considering it's a photo-centric app that, you know, you want to view photos as big as possible, and especially when you're squaring them and cropping them, they're even smaller. So a lot of those apps that I named off, those are really nice Instagram experiences on the iPad.
Yeah, and one of the things I also like is multiple account support. We're trying to start an iMore Instagram feed, and I have mine on my phone, and I have my phone with me most of the time, and then I forget when I get back to go to the iPad that has that account on it. So I'd like to see multiple account support as well.
Yeah, some of those apps offer that. I think most of them do. So you can sign into multiple accounts and just toggle between them. The only other apps that you can really do that with on iPhone are Buffer. You know, some of those services that you can actually buffer posts with, but there's really no way to interact with your Instagram timeline in an app on an iPhone.
Aggravating. I can be more than one photo stream. Let me have my potential.
Well, and they also hide, Instagram hides, because there is a way, and I think I did a how-to on it a while back. I had so many people ask me, is there a way for me to get my Instagram photos to post to my page instead of my personal profile? And Instagram actually allows you to do that, but it's like buried in the settings. So I think I did a how-to on that a while ago, but that was kind of something that I didn't really think that they would want to bury in settings, but there's a way to do that.
Yeah, we did that for the iMore and Android Central and all the other accounts. So when we take a photo there, it goes to that proper Facebook page. Did you try hyperlapse at all? I played around with it. It looks actually pretty good. I know John Gruber made the joke that Microsoft and Facebook were both investigating this time-lapse photography stuff, and it's in iOS 8 as well. But Apple's going to ship it with the next software release. Instagram already has an app out, and Microsoft put out a research paper. No one's tried it yet? Just me?
Nope.
Oh, I didn't realize I muted it. I downloaded it. I haven't really messed with it yet. No.
It's a cool idea because it's different. Microsoft's, I believe, was all post-processing, and I believe what Instagram's hyperlapse does is it uses the accelerometer and all the other sensors in the iPhone to sort of smooth out everything as you're shooting it, which is a real fascinating concept, and I hope Apple integrates that right into the hardware. That would be great. Peter, you looked at Mac apps that can help you recover from bad mistakes.
Yes, indeed. You know, there are a few apps that I think that should be in every Mac user's toolbox or arsenal, especially if you do any kind of Mac support for whatever company or organization you work for. If you're responsible for taking care of Macs, there are definitely a few that you absolutely need. Now, some of these, you know, the price for some of these is a little bit expensive. It's about $100 for some of them, but they're really well worth the money if you have problems that these things can solve. And I'm talking about apps like Alsos, Disk Warrior. I don't know a single Mac IT person worth their salt who doesn't have a copy and swear by it of Disk Warrior. Disk Warrior is one of the best utilities that you can get that will enable you to restore hard drives that are no longer working. Now, obviously, if the hard drive or SSD or whatever is not physically operational, if something has broken it, this isn't going to help. But if you've got a hard drive that has corrupted its partition map somehow, or damaged the data on it in such a way that it can't be read, Disk Warrior can often help you recover from that by rebuilding the partition map using the data as a guide instead of just using the damaged map and then trying to fill in the blanks where it can. Very effective at doing that. This is an app that's been around for a very long time, and it really is the apex app for this sort of thing on the Mac. Then there's TechTool Pro 7 from Micromat, which is an excellent app that not only tests out problems with your hard drive, but also takes a look at memory and other subsystems inside your computer to try to figure out what exactly is going on. It also does some other nice things as well. That's well worth taking a look at. Data Rescue 3 from ProSoft Engineering is another really useful app. This one has a really cool feature that I like called File IQ. If you can feed it a copy of a file that you're trying to recover, the file type, the file information, it will sniff it out like a bloodhound on the sock of a convict that's gone on the run, and it will try to find that data wherever it can. Data Rescue 3 is also particularly handy if you have a digital camera and you're trying to recover files from an SD card that maybe got accidentally deleted, or a compact flash card that doesn't seem to be working right, and that you're afraid that all of your files might be lost. I've had great luck with that. There are other apps on there too. Please check it out. Onyx, for example, that one's from Titanium Software, absolutely free. You can download that now, and that unlocks all of the, not all of the, but many hidden capabilities that your Mac has that if you were a command line Unix guru, you wouldn't have any problems doing at all, but most of us aren't. This actually puts an interface and that sort of stuff. So you can do things like you could flush out application and internet caches, DNS caches. So if you get a lot of errors when you're trying to pull up websites, Onyx is a great app to use to try to figure out if the problem is local on your end. And App Cleaner, App Cleaner lets you make sure to remove all of the extraneous files that are associated with the apps on your machine. If you just drag the app into the trash, and I admit this is infinitely easier on the Mac than it is on Windows already to start with, but if you just drag the app into the trash and then empty the trash, you may be leaving behind stuff that that app has left as a footprint. Cache files, for example, in the library folder, or configuration files that it needs. App Cleaner is a handy free app that will find those files and get rid of them as well, so you can reclaim disk space and prevent problems down the road.
Awesome. I have most of them, and I'm getting the ones that I didn't have.
Cool.
You don't think you need this stuff, and then you really, really badly need it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be caught without it when you need it in a pinch, that's for sure.
A couple other things, Ali, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I did. This contact center from our friends at Contrast who make Launch Center Pro and Mileage Tracker Pro.
I did. I was looking at that during the beta. I haven't looked at the official yet, but I really like it. It might replace my phone app in my dock.
What do you like about it? I mean, I think this is David Barnard and Justin Ewens. They do great work, but what caught you fancy?
I really like the similarities and the consistency between Launch Center Pro. Yeah. I have not taken the time. I love Launch Center Pro when I remember to use it because I haven't completely set it up and I delete and add apps so often. I need to get in a better consistency, better habit of using Launch Center Pro, but I just have never set it up completely, and I like that at least with Contact Center, I can at least manage my contacts better, and that's like one small part of Launch Center Pro.
Yeah, it's specific, so it doesn't do everything that Launch Center Pro does, but it takes the contact portion and does even more of it. For example, it's really good at doing group. Like iOS is not good with groups in general. They're getting better with group messages, but like if I want to email a group like Ali, Peter, and everyone at iMore, I got to do that manually every time. I could set up an alias on the server, but that gets complicated. Contact Center lets you set up all that kind of stuff. It lets you set up how, maybe when I want to dial Ali, I want to remember to always use FaceTime audio with Ali because I don't want to pay long distance. I can have the Ali tile be a FaceTime audio tile. I can have the iMore tile be a group email. It's just a really cool way to kind of take control of how you communicate with people on your iPhone.
Well, and not only that, iOS sucks at managing groups. So, yeah. I mean, I have groups for developers, for colleagues, for family, for friends. I can't add or delete a group unless I go to iCloud on the web or on my Mac, which to me is baffling that you even have the option if you can't manage it in iOS. And as far as I can tell, I don't think iOS 8 changes that. So for me, I can do a lot more with Contact Center, and I can actually manage groups efficiently and use those, and I can't do that with iOS.
We're getting there. Baby steps. Speaking of which, Peter, BioShock. It's out for iOS.
Yeah, and no sooner was BioShock released than people started complaining about the price, because it's actually a premium-priced app with no in-app purchases, which is exactly what people like me anyway want, and what apparently the terrorists do not. So yeah, it's $15. It's the original game. The original game was released in 2007. It's a remarkable feat of engineering. For Christ's sake, people, we have tablet devices that can play games that required a really high-end gaming system to play in 2007 in the palm of our hands, less than an inch thick, only slightly more than a pound, and you have an awesome gaming experience for $500 plus $15 to download the software. When you say it's too expensive, you are an enemy of everything that is good in the universe, and I hate you.
Well, so I'm not going to argue with you there. There's a couple of things I put, like for example, if Peter and I, some people were like, I would rather pay $5 for that. I'm sure that people, at Mobile Nations would rather pay Peter and me $5 for the stuff that we do, but that's not how our world works. There's you command a certain price, and if people are willing to pay it, that's fine. I really hope people are willing to pay this for BioShock, and I know this happened with Final Fantasy when that came out and a couple other premium games, but we get the App Store we want. If you are sick and tired of an App Store that is filled with free-to-play, casino-style, in-app purchase laden, you can't put your car back on the track, your farm doesn't look as nice as Allie's, whatever, if you're sick of that, it's because you didn't support the better games. Vote with your wallet. If you want great premium titles on your devices, buy the great premium titles. I know when I wrote about, I bought on the Apple TV, I bought Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and someone in the comments goes, "You're an idiot. You just spent $20 on iTunes." What I do is I buy the Blu-ray, and then I sell the 3D Blu-ray, I sell the regular Blu-ray, I sell the DVD, and I keep the iTunes code, and I basically get the movie for free. And yay, but I want them to make Captain America 3, and I have to give them money to vote with my wallet to say that I want that content, because making content is not free. Making games is not free. Engineering a game like BioShock to work on a device in your hand is not free. So pay for the apps that you want, and you will get more of them.
Exactly, Rene. I've heard the case that I paid $1 for this as part of the Humble Bundle, or I paid $5 on Steam on sale. So why should I repay $15 to buy it on iPad? You bought a copy of a game that was originally developed in 2007 for Windows and later ported to the Macintosh that has been thoroughly amortized. And its development costs have been recouped by its original developers and the companies that have ported that. 2K Games invested a lot of money taking the original assets, modifying them, and creating a new technology in order for this game to run on the iPad. That development was not cheap, nor was it inexpensive to do. That's why this is priced at $15. Now, at $15, are they making money? I'm sure they are.
I hope so.
And I mean, 2K Games is a big game publisher. This isn't a mom and pop shop where people are going to be out on the street if they don't get their $15 tomorrow. But the bottom line is, game development costs money, and if you want A-list games for the Macintosh, they're going to cost a little bit more. Now, look, you get companies like Squaresoft releasing JRPGs that they've converted to the Macintosh, to the iPad and iPhone, like Final Fantasy. They don't hesitate. They don't think twice about charging $15 or $20 for those games. And you know what? If those games are new releases, it's worth the money. If it's not worth the money, don't buy it, but don't bitch about the price, because as Rene said, we're in the situation that we're in, and if we don't pony up for premium priced products when they come out, we're going to be stuck with nothing but in-app laden garbage from here on out, and that is not a world I want to live in.
No, and sorry, Allie, go ahead.
I'm seeing a lot more games that don't even offer options to remove ads, and that infuriates me.
Yeah.
People, they're buying into this freemium model, and I'm just baffled. I don't know where people think that games or apps come from. They don't just come out of a cloud at no cost. You get paid to do your job when you go to work every day, whether or not you do the same thing. Someone's paying for the development of that game, and if the consumers aren't paying to buy it, they're going to find another way to pay for it. So in this case, it's freemium, and the more people buy into that, the worse it's going to get.
One thing I'll add, though.
You can't remove, Timberman. You can't remove the ads in that. You can't remove, a lot of big popular games now, you can't remove the ads. You don't even have an option.
because that's the only way they can make money off those. But the one thing I'll add is, to Peter's point, if you bought BioShock on Steam and now it's on the iPad, consider it a tip. It's like you go, you have a great meal, and you tip your waiter or your waitress, you tip the staff, you give, you had a great ride, you give whatever reason you have for giving somebody some extra money to show that you appreciate what they did. Consider it that, because that motivates people to do more. And that's what I do. I buy some things twice. I gift stuff sometimes, and it's not that I have a lot of money. I choose not to spend money on a lot of things that other people spend money on, but there are certain things I like, and entertainment is one of those, and apps are one of those. So that's where I choose to spend my money. If you don't, that's great, but you will end up getting the apps that you paid for. And we all pay in one way or another.
Absolutely. That's just like, new apps. iOS gets updated, apps have to be updated. So if you want developers to continue to support those apps, you have to continue buying those apps. So if you don't, they can't develop them. They can't offer them for free. So, it's a circle.
So I'm going to quickly go to some of the questions we have. Milan Patel wants to know, Peter, he's interested in the MacBook Pro. Should he wait, or is it a safe time to buy?
Can he wait? If so, he should. The bottom line is, anytime anything is available, if you wait, you're going to get a better one. The question is not whether you should wait and get a better one. The question is, what do you need right now? If you need something right now, then go out and get something right now, and understand that whatever you get at some point in the not-too-distant future is going to be replaced with something that is. If you're asking me to peer into a crystal ball and tell you what Apple's upgrade schedule for the MacBook Pro is going to be, unfortunately, I can't do that. I'm not a mystic seer. If I had to bet, my assumption would be that we're not going to see a significant refresh to the MacBook Pro until next year. But the bottom line is, you are always going to benefit from waiting, but buy the system you need when you need it, and just accept that somewhere down the road it's going to be obsolete.
Yeah, I mean, they did bump the Haswells fairly recently, and I don't see any sign from Intel that any new chips are coming soon. So I think if a Mac Pro is specifically what you want, you're fairly safe.
Yeah, well, a MacBook or a Mac Pro?
MacBook Pro, sorry.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say Mac Pro. Mac Pro I've got different opinions on, but I think a MacBook Pro right now is a pretty safe bet. The other thing is that even if you buy a system today and Apple comes out with an upgrade tomorrow, how much is it going to shift that much? We know that Broadwell chips that are going to be suitable for the MacBook Pro aren't going to be available until 2015. Yeah. Right, so you've got months before, if not a year, before Apple would really bump the MacBook Pro with new chips that are significantly different than what's in there now, even then, outside of some computational differences, what are you really going to get out of a MacBook Pro tomorrow that you're not going to get out of a MacBook Pro today? What are you doing with it? Do you need to drive a 4K monitor at 60 hertz? Do you need to drive 3 of them? Well, maybe you should wait until something Broadwell-based comes out and see where we're at then. But if your needs are based on what you have to do today, I think that you should get a machine that you need.
All right, my doorbell's ringing, so I'm going to run and answer. I'm going to give you guys one more question first. Can Apple compete with Google, considering Google is huge with services? Allie, Peter, discuss. I'll be right back.
I think so. Absolutely. I think especially with the Apple community, because, I'm assuming that this person's talking about iCloud Drive and some of the other services that Apple's coming out with iOS 8 and Yosemite, so we'll go from that. But I absolutely think so, because how many users do you already have hooked into iCloud backups and documents and data? And, basically it's going to be they're going to tap convert to iCloud Drive, and then they're going to either stay with their free plans or they're going to upgrade and pay monthly. I still know a lot of people that don't even have Dropbox, so I think that for sure, if someone's not already tied into Google, now if they're already tied into Google, I think that's going to be a harder fight to win.
Yeah, exactly. It all depends on what ecosystem that you've allied yourself with. People who are already really dependent on Google services are going to have that experience. I think the other advantage that Google has, obviously, is that it doesn't charge for services that Apple does charge a lot for. You look at the value proposition of iCloud Drive compared with Google Drive, and the sheen comes off of Apple's ecosystem a little bit. Apple charges money for these things, but on the other hand, Apple doesn't share its data with anyone, so that's certainly a big advantage too. So,
Dropbox prices just went down significantly.
Mm-hmm.
That's true too.
That made me think. So, I was for sure thinking, okay, well, I'll keep my lower Dropbox storage and then reevaluate when iCloud Drive comes out and see how that plays into what I do. And Dropbox just made that decision a little bit more difficult yesterday. So.
And you're going to work on an update for us on what we should all be doing, Allie?
Once I decide what I'm going to be doing.
Okay. Israel Chime wants to know, will Apple, so basically he's asking, will the iWatch move the needle for Apple? And this is an interesting question. I'll give you my take quickly and see if you guys agree or disagree. There is tremendous excitement around the idea of Apple doing something new. There is tremendous excitement around the idea of wearables. There is not tremendous money in wearables. At least no one has proven that there are. The iPhone remains one of the most profitable businesses on earth, equaled only by companies with oligopoly control over fossil fuel resources. Apple makes so much money off the iPhone that it's hard to see any other product moving the needle for them. And when people say moving the needle, they mean significantly increasing revenues. I can see the iWatch being something like an Apple TV, which makes the entire value of owning Apple products greater. So the sum total of people buying more Apple stuff is good. But I think I think the excitement level surrounding Apple doing something new in wearables as a market is far greater than the potential to make money from that market, especially with something like a watch, which everyone who has an iPhone is not going to need an iWatch, and that means Apple won't sell as many. My quick take. Is it safe, Marian Lopez? Is it safe to say that new iPhones will be released on September 19th? If you follow the last 3 years' patterns, Apple will release the new iPhones approximately 10 days after they announce them, so it's as safe as. Peter always says, what is it? Peter, past is in prologue.
That's right. Yeah.
So so you can never say for sure until Apple announces it, but that would be in pattern. Raised camera lens from Ron Hopner. We talked about that already. Talked about whether the stream's going to be available. That's Glenn Gray. Benjamin wants to know, what about a new updated coprocessor, the M7? Maybe an audio coprocessor for always listening Siri that's not plugged in? So what he's talking about here is the idea of coprocessors. Apple has a couple on the iPhone 5S. They have the M7, which is a repackaged sensor fusion hub, to use an Antec lingo, which it uses to keep track of things like the accelerometer and the digital compass and motion technologies on the iPhone. It also has a secure enclave, which it uses to authenticate Touch ID and other forms of encryption. Google's Moto X has a natural language and a contextual awareness coprocessor, which means that it's much less work on the battery for the OK Google Now always listening thing. Apple has Hey Siri, which is not so great because every time Guy English says Hey Sirius on a podcast, my iPhone answers. But they have that function, but it's only available when it's plugged in because there's no coprocessor and it would drain the battery too quickly if it was on all the time. So this question is, do we want this on the iPhone? Should Apple make first a next generation motion processor? Maybe. And should they have things like natural language? I don't know about you guys, but I am all for moving Siri on board when it can. Like, for example, if I want to make a calendar appointment, if I want to set an alarm, for example, on my iPhone, there's no reason I should have to go to the internet to do that. That should be able to be done on board. And I think that would reduce the chances for when networking is not working for Siri to not be working. As to the always listening, as long as it defaults to off and I have to explicitly turn it on, I think I'm okay for situations where I'm driving or cooking or just can't use my hands. But I wouldn't want the idea of any of my devices always listening to me for any reason. What do you guys think?
No, me neither.
But local Siri, yay?
Yeah, I would. Okay, yeah. But I don't want it always listening. I would agree with what you said.
Mac Interactive wants to know if Yosemite will be available the same day. We talked about it for Coherence the same day. It's the same day as iOS 8. We talked about it for. Sorry, I'm blanking out what it's called. The SM. Yeah, continuity. But he's asking about stuff like iCloud Drive, and he's saying that, Peter, they're so tied together that it would be a little bit awkward if you had to wait to use half the features until Yosemite shipped.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, as it is now with Yosemite, or I assume with iOS 8, I haven't tried iOS 8 in the betas, but when you when you activate iCloud Drive, you're told that your other devices are not going to be able to access the same data until you upgrade. So that, not activating it does leave that doorway open. You're right. There are compelling reasons why Yosemite would be available the same day as iOS 8, but we just don't know for sure.
I mean, last year they didn't release Mavericks the same day as iOS 7, and that, there were certain things that didn't play nicely together until they did.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a big break, though. I mean, people that spend a lot of time, I know for me it's inconvenient. I use numbers on a regular basis for invoicing, for a lot of other things, and it's kind of irritating even now that if I'm on my MacBook Air, I can't access those spreadsheets because I don't want to upgrade to iCloud Drive. So I have to go back to my iMac with Mavericks, or I have to go to iCloud.com and update through there. So that seems like there's a lot of potential for, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of annoyances and irritations if that doesn't happen, because, I mean, the minute someone upgrades their account to iCloud Drive, they're committed now.
Totally unfair question, but I wonder if Apple could push out an update to Mavericks that would handle things like iCloud Drive
maybe
in the middle term. Like, I don't know how deeply that's integrated or how many resources that would pull off from finishing Yosemite, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. It really wouldn't, because Apple has shown a willingness to wait till something's ready, even if, for a short term that costs them. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, did I miss anything crucial this week?
I don't think so.
All right. Allie, anything on your end?
I don't think so.
All right. So, Allie, if people want to read more of your awesome iOS stuff, where can they go?
Every day at iMore.com, and I am at iMuggle on all the things.
And, Peter, if people want to follow you telling them not to be rude to each other on the internet, where can they go?
iMore.com and at Flarg, Flargh, on Twitter.
You can find me at Rene Ritchie. We're putting all of our coverage for the upcoming iPhone event. It's going to be at imore.com/iPhone-event. So you can find it all there. Bookmark that page. Everything you need to know is going to be there. Like I said, we're doing the history of the iPhone series. We're also doing iOS 8 Explained. I just did huge pieces on HealthKit Explained and HomeKit Explained. I think they're like 2,000 words each, but they get into all the details. So everything you want to know, just check all that stuff out. We'll be there live next week. I'm guessing we might do the podcast early while I'm still there, just so that we can talk about the event. But we haven't scheduled anything yet. But if we do, my guess is that we'll do the show that Tuesday, later on in the evening, just so that you get the information as fast as is inhumanly possible. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you can make it live, we do the show at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I think that's like 6 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, every Thursday afternoon. It's the best way to be here and join us, because you can ask questions, like people were asking all day, and we can answer them for you. If not, we provide the video on YouTube and the audio on iTunes and RSS, so check those out. Please do subscribe. Peter, Allie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rene.
Thank you.
I also want to thank, that's right, GoDaddy. GoDaddy is releasing hundreds of new domains, .guru, .club, .photography, .expert. All you have to do is visit GoDaddy.com and enter promo code iMore30, save 30% on your order. Some limitations apply. Thank you, GoDaddy, for supporting us. Thank you, guys, for supporting us. See you next week. I think there should be music at the end. Peter, we didn't talk about Tim Hortons and Burger King merging.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. The big controversy.
Donut burgers.
Tax inversion!
I haven't even tried a cronut, so...
Apparently there... was it you who told me there were donut burgers already, Allie?
Well, no, but Michelle put a comment on there.
Yeah, well, what ball field was it? Some minor league ball field somewhere in the Midwest was doing Krispy Kremes with cheeseburgers.
Christ. I can feel my arteries petrifying.
It makes my stomach hurt even thinking about it.
It really does. I know.
All right.
I want to go to the bathroom just hearing about it.
On that note, I'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.